Hello class, welcome to Lab 2, installing Ubuntu 2004 in VirtualBox. Before you start this lab, make sure that you either read or watch the videos for the following three presentations. They go into very detail about everything that we're gonna do today. In this lab, I will not stop to explain many things because those are explained in detail in these particular videos over here. I will make reference to this video throughout this lab, so you know, make sure that you watch them beforehand. Go please read the requirements whenever you get a chance. They're pretty much letting you know that you gotta watch those videos before you start or read the presentations. Um, for those of you who do not have a computer that is powerful enough for virtualization, information that you will either learn or figure out for the first time after question one, please make sure to reach out to me ahead of time. Just reach out to me privately so that I can give you something else to work on so that you don't lose grades in this assignment. Since your computer is not that powerful so that you could actually use virtualization on it or doesn't support it, it will be impossible for you to complete this lab successfully. Therefore, you require something else. I don't want you to lose grades, but please do your due diligence and reach out to me early. I will give you 14 days to do this lab. Okay, so let's talk about question number one. And question one, just give me one quick second. Okay. In question one, we will figure out if virtualization is enabled in your system, if your system supports it, and if you have enough hardware to do this job. So first of all, if you're using Mac OS, chances are that your computer already supports virtualization and that it is enabled. If you have an older Apple computer with a dual-core CPU and 4 gigabytes of RAM, your computer can still function for this, but it's gonna be very slow. So just keep that in mind. If you would like some tips on how to make it a little faster, reach out to me and I might have something to share with you that might help you. But overall, a dual-core CPU and 4 gigabytes of RAM, it's not enough for a fast system in 2021. Okay, with that said, for everybody else, and I mean people using Windows, the first thing that you need to do is you need to figure out the amount of CPU, the amount of CPU cores, the amount of RAM, and the amount of free space that your computer has. Once you figure out that information, you need to match it with the recommended settings that I have over here. If they meet or exceed that criteria, then you might proceed. If you don't meet that criteria, I suggest that you reach out to me separately because you might not be able to complete this lab. With that said, I'm going to show you how you can figure out the amount of RAM, CPU, and storage that your computer has. If you already know how to do it, please skip this part of the video. So inside my computer over here, if I want to figure out all that information that I mentioned before, all I have to do is right click on the taskbar over here and open the task manager. If this is the first time that you open your task manager, it will look something like this. You will have to click on more details to get the window that I have over here. Over here you can click on performance, and over here you'll find the information about your CPU. The amount of cores it has. This one has 2 cores, so it's a dual core CPU. Oops, sorry. And the speed at which this CPU is running. You will also find the amount of RAM that you have. My computer, it has 8 gigabytes of RAM, this particular Windows computer. And you also see more information right over here. If you want to know the capacity of your hard drive, it's actually very easy. You can click on disk, especially disk C, and it's going to show you the capacity, which is 100. And is there anything else over there that matters to us right now? Not really. If you want to see how much storage you have free, you can always open my PC, right? And you can click on this PC, and it's going to tell you that I, for instance, have 66.6 gigabytes free of 100. I'm going to close that. You can also find all this information using a tool called Speci, which I show you how to use in the beginning of the course. Or you can use the Windows built-in system information utility by clicking on the Windows key and typing system information. This will tell you everything that you need to know about your computer. All you have to do is pay attention and read. Okay, if you want to know if virtualization is enabled, we can figure out that the same way. In the task manager, You can click on CPU, and over here in a regular computer, not a VM, it should say virtualization and its status, whether it is enabled or disabled. SPECI also gives you that information by going into CPU and checking for the virtualization status. You can also get that information over here in the system summary of system information. Virtualization based security, and you can also have other virtualization settings that you can go through over there. If you find out through this method that virtualization is disabled in your system, there is a guide over here in our lab. Let me turn this computer off real quick because we don't need it anymore. Okay, if you figure out that virtualization is disabled, you can use this guide to enable virtualization in your system. If you are struggling enabling virtualization, please get in contact with me early so that we can set up an appointment and we can go over this together. Okay, once you have enabled virtualization, you are good to go to question number 2. Okay, so question number 2, create a virtual machine. However, before you can create virtual machines, you need to download the hypervisor that we are going to use in our system. That hypervisor is called VirtualBox. To download VirtualBox, click on VirtualBox download page or Google VirtualBox, and you will get to this page over here. This page, click on the appropriate installer for the system that you have. If you have a Windows computer, you're going to click on Windows Host. If you have a Mac, OS X, and I don't think you're using Linux, but if you have a Linux computer, then you click on Linux distribution. Once you have downloaded this, you're going to scroll down and you will download the extension pack. Both of these files needs to be installed in your system. Let's go back to our instructions over here for a second. I have videos on how to install VirtualBox on Windows and Mac. If you click on the links over here, it will take you to the YouTube channel for our course, Linux Workshop, and there you can watch the videos. But the installer is very straightforward. You double click and you click next, 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 and you are done. The installation is very straightforward. Once you have installed VirtualBox, make sure that you install the extension pack. Once you are done with the installation of VirtualBox, make sure you create a virtual machine that meets these specifications over here, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. This GIF over here, it shows you how to create a VM that meets the specifications over here on the side. So if you'd rather watch the GIF other than the video, you can skip ahead. Okay, for the name of my VM, I'm going to choose Ubuntu CIS 106 Spring 21. I'm going to leave the rest as is, Ubuntu and Linux over here. The amount of RAM is going to be 2 gigabytes, which is 2048 megabytes. I'm going to create a hard disk now. It's going to be VDI, it's dynamically allocated, and the size is 50 gigs. You can create it of 40 gigs if you want. I'm going to click on settings over here so that I can modify certain stuff from my computer. In advance, I'm going to enable this to be directional, as stated over here. In the description, I'm going to put this basic information about my system so that I don't forget it. For the username, I'm going to choose John Doe, so J Doe. I'm going to assume that my name is John Doe for this particular lab. You can choose whatever you want. It doesn't need to be your name. I'm not going to tell you how you name your stuff. The number of processor is going to be 2. I'm going to disable the floppy disk because it's not needed, and I'm going to move it down. In the display section, I'm going to increase all of this to 128 megabytes, enabling 3D acceleration as well. In the storage section, I need over here to put my Ubuntu installation media. And you might ask yourself, where do I find that? Okay, you see where it says OS Ubuntu 24 bits. Click on the ISO URL, which is going to take you to the Ubuntu installation media download page. Over here, you're going to click on download. And the ISO image will start downloading automatically. Now I already downloaded this file, so I don't need it. So in my case, I'm going to click cancel. You need the file. Once that file is downloaded, then you're going to click on empty. You're going to click on the little disk on the side, and you're going to click on choose a disk file. Go to your downloads folder or wherever your downloads go, and click on Ubuntu 2004 Desktop AMD 64 ISO. Click on open, and click on OK. Let me click on settings one more time because I forgot something crucial. I'm going to disable audio. Those of you who are using Mac OS, make sure that you disable audio because there is a non-bug with the audio section over here that might break your virtual machine unintentionally. I'm gonna leave the rest as is and I'm gonna click on OK. Okay, let's scroll down over here and let's see what do we need to get grade for this question. Take a screenshot of your virtual machine settings. Your screenshot must show all the settings of your VM. These over here are my virtual machine settings. So I'm gonna take a screenshot of that. And I'm gonna save my screenshot somewhere in my computer. Make sure that you remember where. Okay, I'm gonna create a folder called lab2 and I'm gonna click on create and I'm gonna save my image. I will name my first image virtualbox.png just to make it easy to find. Again, you save that file wherever you want in your system. Just make sure that you remember it because we're gonna use it in the previous question. Okay, in the next question, sorry. You have successfully completed question number 2. Let's move along to question number 3. In question number 3, we are going to follow the setup guide so that we can install Ubuntu 20.04 in our system. And we are going to take a screenshot of Ubuntu in the last screen that requires us to reboot. But before we do any of that, we need to turn our virtual machine on, and you can do that by clicking on the VM and clicking on Start. You can also do it by clicking on the VM, click on Machine, and click on Start. You can also do it by right-click and clicking on Start. So I'm going to start my VM. Over here, I am going to insert the virtual disk that I downloaded from the internet earlier that contains the installation of Ubuntu. So I'm going to click over here and I'm going to select Ubuntu 20.04. I'm going to click on Start. You should have only one option, but because I have several machines created, I have more than one option. The first window that will appear over here, the first screen, is a disk check. This is going to check that our disk is healthy and that it's not altered in any way. After the disk check is complete, Ubuntu is going to boot the installation, which will allow us to select either a live environment or an installation wizard. For this lab, we are going to select the installation wizard and complete the installation. Okay, I am going to click on Ubuntu VM Setup over here. I'm going to open this in a new tab because this file contains the settings that we need to apply to our virtual machine. As you can see, we already created a VM, so we can ignore that part over here. This particular GIF is going to show you everything that we did so far, but I'm going to go to the during installation settings because this is the installation and that's the stage where we are at the moment. I'm going to click on Install Ubuntu over here. As per our indications, our keyboard layout is English and is English US, unless you have a different keyboard in your house, connected to your computer obviously. I'm going to click on normal installation, download updates, and also install third-party tools, and I'm going to click on continue. This step takes a little bit, so don't panic if your computer seems to be frozen. It is not. I assure you it isn't. In this section, we're going to click on Erase Disk and Install Ubuntu and click on Install Now. We're going to click on Continue on that little warning. That is letting us know that the virtual hard drive is going to be formatted, but that's okay. Yes, I am in New York, actually New Jersey, but New York and New Jersey have the same time zone. Okay, your name. My name is John Doe. Okay, in there you're going to put your name. I'm putting John Doe as an example. My computer name is CIS106VM. You can check any computer name you want. My username is jdoe, and my password is the most secure password in the world. That is sarcasm, by the way. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to click on continue. And that is it. The installation wizard will do everything else on its own, and it's going to ask us to reboot once the installation has been completed. Unless there is an error, you shouldn't see anything else. You shouldn't see anything else other than this beautiful presentation that explains you a little bit about what Ubuntu is all about. Now is a great time to go grab a coffee, and that's exactly what I am going to do now. Okay, now that the installation is complete, we're gonna take a screenshot of this window over here. So I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna call this a screenshot question 2, question 3.png, and I'm gonna save it in the same folder that I saved the previous one. Perfect. I'm going to restart the system by clicking on restart now. And there is still another message that will appear over here. Since we're using a VM, all I have to do is press enter and it will do the removal and reboot automatically. Okay, we are going to move along and do question 4 now. Prepare Ubuntu 20.04 for our course. And that preparation entails updating the system, removing unnecessary software, and pretty much doing all these bullet points that we see over here. Now, all we have to do is go into our VM setup guide over here. So I'm going to open it in a new tab. Let's remember that we need to take a screenshot of our virtual machine when we're done with this, once we have switched our desktop environment. So let's keep that in the back of our heads. Okay, so I'm going to click over here on the guide. We have already set up a VM and we have already done the installation. We did the during installation part, but we haven't done is the post installation section. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to log in to my virtual machine with my super secure password. And we're going to run this script over here in our terminal over here. However, since we haven't installed the guest additions, we won't be able to share the clipboard between our host and our VM, which means that we need to go to this website in our VM over here. This is the welcome screen of Ubuntu, and I'm just gonna click on next, and done. I'm going to open a web browser, and I'm also going to open a terminal window in my virtual machine. Okay, let me minimize the terminal. I am going to go to github.com/ra559/cis106 and press enter. Over here in this website, we are gonna go to, no, I don't want to sign in, come on. We are gonna go to labs, lab 2, scroll all the way down to question 4, and over here we are gonna open the Ubuntu VM setup guide. We will scroll down over here and we're going to find the two commands that we're going to run. So the first command that we're going to run is this one over here. So we're going to copy this. This is going to take care of all the other stuff we mentioned before. And we're going to click on our terminal over here. And in the purple area, we're going to right click and we're going to click on paste. Press enter. If you see the prompt for updating the system over here, like this, please cancel it. Click on exit to exit because that's going to interfere with what we really need to do. Now we're going to type the password for our system. My password, as you can see, is not shown. That is a security feature. You are typing, it's just not being displayed to you for security measures. Let's press enter and let that roll. That's going to take a little bit, so let's wait on that. Okay, now that we have successfully run the script, our prompt is back over here and we can type more commands. What we are going to do is that we are going to go back to our guide and we're going to copy the second part of the script over here. And we have it open on Firefox in our VM, so all we have to do is copy over here and paste in our terminal. This time we don't need to put our administrator password, and this should be very quick. To select OK, press the Tab key on your keyboard and the space bar. Move using the arrow keys, you move to yes and then press space, not enter, space bar, and it will continue. This installation is actually very quick, so Okay, now that we have run the second command, we are ready to install the guest additions ISO, which is an extra program that is going to allow us to do extra things with our VM, such as going full screen so that you can utilize the full screen of your computer. If I try to go full screen right now, notice that it stays in that little square, which doesn't work for us. We want to be able to go full screen. So we're going to type on devices, insert guest addition cd image. This is going to trigger a little prompt on the system over here, and we're going to click on run. We're going to type our password, and we'll wait until that is done. Okay, in order for us to apply the changes that have been made due to the installation of the guest additions, we need to restart our system. So I'm just going to I'm going to exit my terminal, I'm going to close Firefox, and I'm going to click on the little icon on the top left corner, and I'm gonna click on power off / logout, and I'm gonna click on power off. Over here I am gonna click on restart. Okay, now that we have rebooted our system, I'm going to click over here to log in, and I'm gonna type my password. But before I log in, I am gonna switch the desktop environment to GNOME Classic Metacity, and I do that by clicking on the gears icon on the bottom and clicking on GNOME Flashback Metacity. Now I can press enter. Oops, sorry, I put an extra character over there. Okay, sorry for that pause over there, although because I paused the video recording, you probably not gonna notice it, but when I get over here, I am gonna type my password, 123, right? And I'm gonna click on the gears icon over here, and I'm gonna choose GNOME Flashback Metacity. Then I'm gonna press enter, and it's gonna throw me into my GNOME Classic. What do you mean, Ubuntu? What do you mean that didn't work? There you go. I probably put the wrong number in there. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our lab because we have a specific screenshot to take, and it says over here that we need to take a screenshot once we switch our desktop environment. So once you get to this screen, we're gonna take a screenshot of our system. Perfect. There you go. I'm gonna click on save, and I'm gonna put it right over here, and I'm gonna call this question 4, and I'm gonna save it. Perfect. Now we have successfully completed question number 3. Question number 4 is nothing but continuing the setup of our question number 5. We already did question 4. Question number 5 is setting up VS Code and setting up Git and GitHub in our new Ubuntu computer. So now I am going to go full screen over here, and I am going to open Firefox. Over here I am gonna go to github.com, CIS106, labs, lab number 2, and in VS Code we are going to install all of these extensions. VS Code was already installed during our script run, so we're gonna click over there. Again, I found VS Code by clicking on Applications, Programming, and Visual Studio Code. Make sure you install all the extensions over here. Let's go on the gears icon in the bottom, extensions. I'm gonna put this on the side, and I can snap windows left and right in Ubuntu by pressing the Windows key on my keyboard and the arrow key either left or right. And now I'm gonna look for live server. and Markdown. Okay, so we're going to install Markdown all-in-one. We are going to install Markdown Preview Enhanced, and we're going to install Markdown to PDF. We're also going to install Markdown Table of Content, or Markdown TOC. So TOC, install, and Code Spell Checker. Code Spell Checker. Lastly, we need PDF Preview because we want to be able to preview PDF files inside VS Code to make our life easier later on in the course. And we are done. Perfect. Now that we have set up VS Code, we need to set up Git and GitHub. For that, I'm going to minimize VS Code. I'm gonna go full screen on my Firefox over here, and I'm gonna open how to set up Git and GitHub. I'm gonna open it in a new tab, and we're gonna follow these instructions. We have already installed Git, so we don't need to do this part, but we do need to do this part. This is to set our username and our password. But before you do this, why don't you go and log into GitHub? So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna go to github.com. Remember that for lab 0 you had to create a GitHub account. So I'm gonna click on sign in, and I'm gonna type in my email address that I use for signing into my GitHub. So I'm gonna do Linux. In my case, it's Linux Workshop 67@gmail.com. In your case, it's whatever email address you use to sign up for GitHub in lab 0. And I don't remember the password, so let me go and take a look at my password manager real quick. Okay, now that I have my password, I'm gonna sign in, and no, I don't want to save that there. So as you can see over here, this is my GitHub repository. You don't have to do this part, but well, you actually have to do this part. But just so that we are square, I'm gonna delete this folder over here. So delete directory, perfect. Directory has been deleted. Yes, commit these changes. Okay, so your CIS 106 folder should look something like mine, but you're gonna have a bunch of files in yours over there. So what I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna clean this directory a little bit. I'm gonna clean this repository a little bit so that it resembles what you have a little better. So you're gonna have these two files plus a couple of more files there. Oh, sorry, I didn't commit the changes. My mistake. Let me delete this. Again, yours is gonna look a little different than mine, but the steps are still the same. We're still gonna do the same. Now that you are logged in into GitHub over here, let's set up our environment inside Linux, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're gonna open a terminal by going into Applications, System Tools, and then Terminal. I'm gonna put my terminal to one side, and I'm gonna put my web browser into the other side, just so that I can copy and paste commands, right? So I'm not gonna copy and paste this. I'm gonna type it, but you're welcome to copy and paste it and make the adjustments as needed. So the first one is git config, and we are gonna config globally our username. If you don't know what your GitHub username is, you can find it by going into your GitHub profile and clicking over here on the icon, and that is your username over there. Mine is Linux Workshop 67, so I'm gonna type Linux Workshop 67, and I'm gonna press enter. That has been set already. The next thing that we need to set is our email address. So I'm gonna run a similar command. By the way, I can browse the history of commands by using the arrow keys up and down. In this case, I type up because I want to modify the previous command that I type. And I don't need the username, I need the user email. So I'm gonna delete everything until I find user period. And here I'm gonna type email. And then I'm gonna put my email address, which is Linux Workshop 67@gmail.com. My Gmail has been set globally. The next thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna put credential helper so that our password gets cached in the system, so that we don't have to type our password every time we send files to GitHub. We do it the following way. We can just copy this and paste it here. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we're gonna set a timeout, right? So because we don't want our we after enabling credential helper, we need to tell it for how long we want to save our credentials, right? And I gave you a little table over here in the bottom that you can use, to pretty much guide yourself. Okay, if you want 24 hours, you choose this option. If you want 48, then you set it to this option. If you want 1 month, you set this option. I'm gonna set mine for 2 weeks, for example. Okay, as I was explaining before, the next thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna set our timeout time. I'm gonna set mine to 2 weeks, so I'm gonna use this value over here. You can set yours to whatever time you desire, and that is done. Perfect. Now that we have set this up, we are done with our Git and GitHub setup. Now it's time for us to move along to question number 5. What do we need to take a screenshot of? Now, we need to take a screenshot of our virtual machine showing VS Code running. So I'm going to open VS Code over here. I'm just going to minimize that and make VS Code full screen, and I'm going to take a screenshot of this guy. Sorry, I'm going to go outside, and that's better. So I'll take a screenshot of VS Code, and I'm going to save it in the same directory. I'm going to call this question 5 and save. Perfect. Now, let's take a look at what do you need to submit for this assignment, because you successfully created a virtual machine, install Ubuntu, and set up VS Code for you to do your assignments inside your virtual machine. Now you need to submit your work. So what do we need for submission? If we go back to our instructions over here, it says that we need to create a markdown document with the following information, right? And then we need to upload the document to GitHub. But how to do that? How are we gonna do that? Okay, that's actually very easy. So the first thing that we need to do is, let me reload over here so that I log in. I am logged in. The first thing that we need to do is, do you remember the CIS 106 directory that you created back then when you did lab 1, sorry, right? Which is this one over here, right? This is my Linux workshop CIS 106. If you don't know how to get to your repository, it's actually very easy. All you have to do is click on your username over here and click on your repositories, and then you're gonna see one that says CIS 106, right? So I'm gonna click on CIS 106. We are gonna grab this repo from GitHub. We're gonna download it to our local computer, and there we're going to work. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy the URL on top. Copy. I am going to open a terminal. Let me go full screen real quick. I'm going to clear the screen by typing the command clear. And I am going to I'm going to clone that repository using the command git clone, which is going to download the repo to my local computer. And I'm going to paste the URL over here in my terminal. Press enter, and this will automatically download the repository, put it in your computer. How do you know that the repo is in your computer? Well, if you go to places and click on home, notice that you have a new folder in your home directory called CIS 106. Perfect. Now what I'm gonna do is that I am gonna open that folder in VS Code. So I'm gonna go back to VS Code. I'm gonna click on my files over here, and I'm gonna click on open folder. Then I'm going to make sure that I'm in my home directory, and I'm going to click on CIS 106, and I'm going to click on OK. This is going to open our folder right here in VS Code for us to work. Over here, I'm going to create one folder called images. Images. Notice that I click on the little folder icon over here, and I type the name of the folder. Perfect. I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this folder. Sorry, I created the folder in the wrong place. I'm gonna another way to do it. Let me show you this other way. I'm gonna right click over here, and I'm gonna click new folder, and this folder is gonna be called labs. This is where I'm gonna put all my labs. I'm gonna create another folder, and this folder is gonna be called notes. This is where I'm gonna put all my nodes files, and obviously in the image folder I'm gonna put my images. Now if you go to places one more time, let me go here, places, home, CIS 106, notice that the folders that we created are beautifully laid over there inside our folder. Now I'm gonna open images, and I'm gonna leave that file manager open. I'm going to maximize my virtual machine, and I am going to open the file manager on my host computer, right? If you're using Windows, that will be Windows Explorer. If you're going using Mac, that will be, files. So I'm going to press the right control key on my keyboard so that my keyboard is released from my virtual machine, and I'm going to open my file manager. Since I'm using Linux, my file manager is open differently from yours, but I am confident that you know how to open your file manager in your computer. Otherwise, how else did you made it this far? I place the folder where I have all my pictures from my lab inside a folder called Labs 2. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to select all these images that I have over here that are the answer to my questions, and I'm gonna drag and drop them inside my virtual machine folder called images. And that's it. I'm gonna do full screen one more time on my virtual machine. I'm gonna minimize this, and I am gonna click on labs over here. Notice that once I click my folder, the little arrow over here changed, notifying me that I'm working inside that folder. I'm gonna create a new file by clicking on the plus sign over here, and this file is gonna be called lab2.md. Press enter. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to my my lab2 file over here in the class repo. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I'm gonna copy all of this. I'm gonna paste it on my VS Code over here on lab 2. And I'm gonna save my file. I'm gonna press Ctrl S on my keyboard to save, and now all I have to do is place over here the path of each and every one of the images. So I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna put a description inside the brackets called question to answer, and over here I'm gonna place the path to my URL. The path needs to start with 2 periods, and don't worry about what the meaning of those 2 periods are, because there is a lecture in which I will explain to you what those 2 periods means. And then I'm gonna select the answer of the picture that answers that question, which is virtualbox.png. I'm gonna repeat the same actions for the other questions. So I'm gonna do here question 3 answer. And the URL here is very similar. I start with 2 periods / images question 3. Then I do the same thing over here. Images question 4. And the description here is question 4 answer. Okay, I'll do something very similar. I'm just gonna copy and paste for speed. Question 5, and then here question 5. I'm gonna save, and I'm gonna put a little bit of a spacing in between. Just gonna do this, 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 this. Okay, I'm gonna save my file, and I'm gonna do a little preview over here. So I'm gonna do Markdown Preview Enhanced, and my answers are saved correctly. If your document looks like mine, congratulations, you are almost done. I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna open a terminal inside VS Code by clicking on Terminal and clicking on New Terminal. The next step here is to send this information to GitHub. And how do we do that? Well, we need to run the command git add period, which is going to add all the changes that we made to our GitHub repository to our current commit. And now we need to do a commit, which is going to save these changes so that we and prepare them so that we can send them to GitHub. So we're gonna do git commit -m, and in here we're gonna put a description. And this was a task, and we're gonna call it finished lab 2. Now we're gonna send this information to GitHub. So we're gonna do git push. You are gonna receive a prompt like this because this is the first time that you actually pushed from GitHub. So we're gonna click on allow. This is going to open Firefox from us, and it's gonna open an authentication. So we're gonna click on continue, open application, open link. This is gonna open here soon. There you go. So we're gonna click on open. And voila. If you go to GitHub now, you are going to notice, let me refresh my repository. Notice that I'm working inside Linux Workshop CIS 106. Notice that my files have been sent to GitHub successfully. And this over here, when you click on labs, click on lab and do lab2.md. And this is the URL that you are going to give me. So you are going to log into Blackboard. Sorry, type the wrong thing. There you go. Perfect. Labs, lab number 2, write submission, and you are going to copy the URL to this file right over here in your submission. Click submit, and you are done. Once you submit your work, close this, I'm going to close this, I'm going to close this, and I don't need that open either. I'm going to turn my computer off, and I'm going to take a snapshot of my system. If something goes wrong later, this snapshot is going to allow me to revert back to one state where my virtual machine was working perfectly. So I'm going to open VirtualBox. I'm going to click on the menu over here, and I'm going to click on snapshots. I'm going to click on take, and I'm going to call my snapshot lab 2 complete. Perfect. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate in asking in Slack, and I'll be more than happy to jump in a call and help you.